hot take from me. Start it off. I'm sure you saw the tweet. We'll get your thoughts on it later. NCAA, great job of robbing now Player of the Year from a Final Four appearance. We'll get into that more. Throughout the episode, welcome inside the Hera Press Box. There are a couple of things that I wanted to get to as far as college basketball goes. That might be the main thing that we do talk about in tonight's episode. We can also talk about NWSL, which started last weekend. We'll soon begin week number 2 in NWSL soccer action. And also we need to recognize the Metropolitan Riveters as NWHL champions as they beat the Buffalo Buttes 1-0. Alexa Grishow with the game-winning goal for the Riveters, who were dominant throughout the season, starting off the year 12-0. They finished off their season with a postseason championship to put next to their regular season championship. And eventually, we'd still like to have a hockey episode dedicated strictly to hockey, recapping Clarkson's championship in the collegiate ranks, and now looking at the Metropolitan Championship in WHL. What's next for the WHL? We'd like to have something about that.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and jump into college basketball, if you don't mind. I have a couple of questions that I want to ask you that I did not give you any time to prepare for. And I think that we'll be able to appreciate your initial reaction to those a little bit better. These are good questions for that, I think so.
We'll see about that one.
One of them plays off of comments that we talked about previously on the Hera Press Box, and I want to spin that around, though. So we've heard that the UConn domination has been bad for the game. So spinning that around now and putting that as option A versus option B, what is better for the game? The domination that UConn has had over the last however long, or the fact that all 4 number 1 seeds have made it to the Final Four that begins this weekend for college basketball? So those are our 2 options there. Which is better for the game, UConn's domination or all 4 number 1 teams making the Final Four? Do you want to go first, or do you want
to? You can go first on this one.
Okay. So yeah, all number 1 teams made it. Connecticut, Notre Dame, Mississippi State, and Louisville to the Final Four, which begins tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow, the 30th. Which is better for the game? So we have this epicenter of a championship where you can pick this one because all of the great teams are there. You're seeing the best teams compete for a championship, which is what the bracket was set up to do, to bring those 4 teams together in Columbus to play for a Final Four and championship. Or you can pick this UConn team that has dominated under Gino Auriemma and given all basketball fans something to know about and to turn on ESPN and hey, that I've seen that guy before. This is that team that wins 80 games in a row before they lose. So which of those 2 are we deciding on, and which is better? I'm going to go with the 1 seeds making the Final Four. And probably because of those reasons that I just mentioned, that this is sort of how it was set up. Right. You want to see the best, the best. Yeah, it's nice to have maybe a Cinderella story, but something that's always kind of weird in our side of things is that these games are either decided within 5 points or they're 25-point games, and the lower seed you get, the less quality teams you start flirting with. We might see a blowout here.
Right, and that's essentially the way it's set up, is that the number 1 seeds, like you said, are supposed to essentially make it to the Final Four. And I would agree with you. I really don't want to pick one or the other, which is why I had you go first. I think that they're both great things, and I think they're both doing a lot for basketball. But initial reaction was to go with all 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four, because I don't think I don't know when the last time that happened, but to me, it doesn't seem like that's ever the case where you get all 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four, even though that's essentially how the bracket is set up for those teams to make it to the Final Four. So that's my choice.
Your thoughts on Final Four this weekend?
I'm always nervous. I'm a UConn fan. I'll always cheer for UConn. And I don't like seeing them lose just because they never really do lose. And then when they do lose, it becomes this whole big deal that they lost. And I just have a feeling that you would think that they would have to have not maybe necessarily a meltdown, but just they won't continue to put up the numbers. That's kind of always my thought, is that they won't always continue to put up the numbers that they're putting up, and then game in and game out, they keep putting the numbers up that they do.
Yeah, I haven't seen a point differential for the entire tournament, and I'd imagine they've had to have set some record with the point differential. I mean, even from the first round when they won by
for the first round they
almost
did.
won by 100 points. Yeah. And then I got it pulled up here. Almost 30 points second round against Quinnipiac and beating Duke by 13 points.
Yeah.
And then beating South Carolina by almost 30.
Yeah, and beating Duke by 13 was probably their second closest game that they played all season. I think they were in a close game with Texas. I don't remember what that differential was, but I mean 13 you're looking at, that's actually a pretty good game. That's a good game for any team to beat a Duke team by 13. But for UConn to beat a team by 13, that's essentially a close game for them. I was quite shocked the handling that they had of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was definitely going to be more of a battle.
And we've seen that from South Carolina. Playing against UConn, is this as much of a on a pedestal Gino Auriemma has been as a coach for that team? Does this, in my opinion, that just shows how great he is, that he's played South Carolina before, and they've had those really close games, and they're usually always tough, and now all of a sudden things change and it's nowhere close. Is that should we attribute that to him and his greatness, or was something else out of whack with the Gamecocks in that game? Any ideas on what we saw?
I mean, I would just say that that's the brilliance of Gino and his coaching staff, and being able to have a team that performs just night in, night out, and be able to be disciplined the way that they are. And I mean, I haven't looked at the summary of the game, but I would like to see what UConn was shooting and what South Carolina was shooting. So I feel like the majority of the time UConn doesn't miss. I mean, their talent is just so incredible. Not that South Carolina's wasn't, but I think UConn just brings it to another level.
Sort of transitioning into my next point. That was an Elite Eight game. It's not a big difference, but let's put that into a Final Four atmosphere where both teams are now facing each other to go to the national championship. Do you think that game is closer just because of that atmosphere and what's on the line? I mean, I know obviously going to the Final Four is a big deal, but it's still another step. You're on a grander scale, right in the Final Four. Does that change anything?
I think from a UConn perspective, no. Just because I think from both sides, no, in terms of at least what you're telling your players. You're telling your players that this is just another game. You got to win this one now. There's no looking past now. But obviously, of course, atmosphere is always going to play into it. When something like going to the national championship is on the line, you're going to be putting your body on the line, pretty much is what it comes down to. And so I think atmosphere is going to play into it. I'm just not sure how much it plays into it.
and like I said, transitioning, that question stems from my thinking about South Carolina. How far do they deserve to get to? Obviously, got their butts kicked by UConn, but how far do they deserve to get to? And that goes back to Asia Wilson again, named AP Player of the Year for this 2017-18 season, and in my opinion, absolutely robbed by the committee to not get to the Final Four in her senior season, and we had to see it in that way, nearly a 30-point loss for South Carolina. But you know, how far did she deserve to get to? How far did that team deserve to get to? Far do they get to? I think that's to the Final Four. I mean, Notre Dame's a good team. I don't think they have a chance against UConn. There are other 2 seeds which we've already talked about. We talked about Oregon. They showed they belong. They hung with Notre Dame and down to the wire. Had the lead at halftime. I think maybe even at the end of the third. They didn't have a lead at the third, but they had a lead at halftime, right?
Yeah,
so they played like they should have been there. Baylor, we know they were missing their starting point guard. They got beat by the 6 seed Oregon State. So there's a 2 seed that you can switch, Baylor and South Carolina. And now we're talking about South Carolina playing a Louisville team that Oregon State by 33. That matches up or might favor South Carolina more. And then 2 seed instead of Texas. Texas got upset by UCLA in the Sweet 16. So if you switch those 2, you know, and have a UConn Texas Elite Eight and a Mississippi State South Carolina Elite Eight, I feel like you're giving more credit to the work that Asia Wilson has done. And I'm sure they don't single out players, but when that player is the program, like Asia Wilson has been.
Right. And I'm in complete agreement with you. When I saw your tweet, that was essentially my first thought when I saw the bracket announced. I was like, no way, you're really going to have the potential of UConn versus South Carolina in the Elite Eight versus you could have UConn versus the defending champs in the championship game. So then that made me question essentially how they go about it. So my assumption, I guess, is you're going, you know, UConn's the number 1 seed overall. So everyone else from 2 through 16, that should be, in my mind, it should be the worst 2 seed, the worst 3 seed, the worst 4 seed, and so on. Do you get what I'm saying? So out of the 4 different regions, that's the worst 2nd seed you can have.
I disagree.
But you disagree?
Yeah.
So it should be the best 1 seed and the best 2 seed. It should be the best all in one side.
No, it would be, if you really want to get into this, so it would be best 1 seed, worst 2 seed, best 3 seed, worst 4 seed.
Okay. So either way, 2 seed is your worst 2 seed, right?
Yep, and that one's in the overall 1 bracket.
Now, is that the way it goes, or what is the exact way? Because that was my assumption, and then I saw South Carolina there, and I was like, "There's no way that you really just picked South Carolina as your worst 2 seed, or is it their best 2 seed?"
Geographically, South Carolina, that was in Albany, East Coast. Texas was in Kansas City. That makes sense, right?
Right.
Baylor and Lexington, that's close. And then Oregon and Spokane.
Yeah, that was the only one that really didn't make sense because Notre Dame, if anything, got screwed on location there.
Yeah, clearly an Oregon bias in the crowd that night.
Yeah. So that was where I was a little bit confused too. But yeah, that was my first thought is that. And even just in not even having to single out Asia Wilson, just that program as a whole and where Dawn Staley has taken it, the fact that they're the defending champs, you got to imagine that should have played into where they were placed within the bracket. Or it should have been, is what I should say.
I agree. But anyway, This is what we came down to. This is what we got away with. UConn, Notre Dame play against each other. Mississippi State, Louisville on the other side of the bracket. You had UConn in your main bracket. That was right. Right. Okay. And then I had UConn, UCLA. So I'll obviously stick with UConn, Louisville, Mississippi State. That one. I guess I would. I'll probably side with Louisville.
Yeah.
I'll probably side with Louisville on that one.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I could see the committee, just kind of going back to your question, I'm with you with Louisville though, is that you have the ability to have a UConn South Carolina game, so the defending champs in the Elite Eight, and then you have the possibility of UConn meeting Mississippi State in the championship game. Mississippi State knocked them out last year, so it's kind of you covered all of your bases with that, but I still don't think that was the way to go about it.
Okay, next question that I have for you, and I'll let you answer this first. And there's no real great way to, no specific question that I want to ask, but just the thought of it, kind of how it would play out, if it would help or hurt one league over the association. How would this break news? Would this be a huge headline? What goes on in the world that sees Gino Auriemma move up and coach at a WNBA team?
It's man. So I wasn't expecting you to say WNBA team. I was expecting you to say switching to the men's side. So to me, I would think that would be a headline, just because he's been at UConn for so long and he's run this dominant program for so long. And for me, it's kind of like, well, what could be better than this? What could be better than pretty much winning every single game? So that's
there's a good first segue of a question to ask. What could be better than this domination that he's seen? It's obvious he loves the game. He loves this realm of the sport. So in thinking about what could be better than this domination, what about moving up and drawing interest to a professional league and having probably networks like ESPN actually pay attention to how his success translated to the professional league and what kind of attention that would draw to whatever team he went to? Is that something that makes sense for him, him to pursue, I guess?
Yeah, I think for me, maybe not necessarily pursue in a way of, I don't see him pursuing it in a way of like, okay, I've decided that I want to do this. Let's just see which team, offers me a job. I see maybe him kind of just getting his feet wet with it. And you kind of see he has the ability to coach pro players, and that's obvious because he's coached the U.S. team before. And so I don't see it as a problem of him being able to coach in the association. I think it's going to be different. I think that for him, I read this article on him the other day, actually, and I meant to send it to you, but for him, the way his thought process works and the way he is he's looking for perfection. And I don't think you're getting that or getting as close to that as if he leaves UConn. And then there's the part of what if he just completely fails in the WNBA?
And we've talked on here about becoming complacent or being satisfied with where you're at. Does that ever actually happen where you're satisfied? It's kind of like, okay, I don't really care if I win. I made it this far. At some point, I mean, I know he likes to win, and he's going to win at UConn. But at some point, it's kind of like, what's next? Okay, I've maybe not had enough of this, but what else is out there? So I agree with you on that about what he thinks, and that he's closer to perfection and having this respect from his players and getting these young talented athletes that are trying to do perfection themselves, as opposed to just trying to get by with a W, which seems to be the professional aspect of it. But he's a smart coach, obviously, and if he were to move on to that other challenge, I have no doubt in my mind that he would be able to adapt to that and realize that the goal's the same, but how you get there is going to be different.
Right.
And that comes with realizing that doing this for maybe a different cause, like that. And that's just what I said about as far as bringing the attention to the league.
Right. And I think that would be a grabber for the league. That's going to bring a lot of attention to it. If you look at it, there's got to be more college basketball games on ESPN than there are WNBA games. I mean, the exposure that happens at programs like UConn, and you can throw South Carolina in there and in Mississippi State, it completely drops off once you get to the association, which is just the complete opposite of really the way it should be. There should just be an extreme amount of exposure at the professional level and less on the collegiate level, which is essentially our whole issue with the NCAA right now, I guess, in general. Just the amount of pressure that they put on these, teenagers just beginning to be adults is incredible.
Do you think Gino would be a free agent draw if he coached the WNBA team?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, players would go there to play for him.
Oh, yeah.
Even though he has zero professional experience?
Yeah, I would think, if anything, his players are going to want to go play back for him again. So it's going to be just UConn at the pro level. And anybody who's, I'm assuming, played on the U.S. Olympic team or any U.S. team and has been coached by him is going to want to play for him, is my thought. And maybe I could be completely wrong. I
think he would be. I think he'd be a draw for players.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you think he would land? Or have the potential? Or what would be a good fit?
I have no idea. That'd be something I'd want to look into before I said anything. Obviously, he's there with the son in town, so that would make sense with that. So yeah, we'll expect an announcement from Gino next week that he's moving on to the WNBA, and you heard it here first. So we'll also report back on that topic. Other thing we can go over this evening is that NWSL action that started last weekend with Saturday, the game on Lifetime. That was North Carolina and Portland, right? North Carolina and Portland was on
North Carolina, Portland, yep.
Courage won 1-0 against the Thorns. There were a couple of ties. Orlando and Utah 1-1. Utah came out very strong in that match. Orlando did tie the Royals up, and both teams now have a tie on their record. Also, Houston and Chicago with a tie. Both teams missing quite a bit. That was probably the ugliest game of the four, I would say. Yeah. Then Seattle beat the Spirit 2-1. That game was in Seattle.
Yeah, that game had the potential of being the ugliest game of this past weekend. Seattle pretty much controlled that first half, and it was pretty shocking, the lack of goals that they got out of that first half. So I was pretty impressed with Washington in the second half.
Any comments about the games you got to see? Go 90 comments, anything you got?
Go 90. I can say this, and I think you're going to be surprised for this. So I did a team that was trending up, a team that was trending down, a player that was trending up, and a player that was trending down. So my player for trending up was Alyssa Nair. I was actually quite impressed with the way that she played this past weekend. So that's hopefully some good signs to come for the U.S. national team, and hopefully she stays consistent there.
Mm-hmm. You see you have a player turning down as well?
I didn't really have one. I didn't get to watch as much as I would have liked.
Uh-huh.
Over this past weekend. I pretty much only saw a game and a half. So I didn't really have a player trending down. Team trending down that I had, though. This really isn't that surprising, but it was Houston. And I think just the way that game ended, they were in control and they gave a goal up in stoppage time. So they needed to make one more play and they couldn't. So hopefully that doesn't continue. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long season for me.
Yeah, and that was against a Chicago team that did not have Sam Kerr, Casey Short, Vanessa DiBernardo, Julie Ertz, Rosie White, or Yuki Nagasata. So just a
basically
couple
their
of
whole team.
Key players. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
One thing that was enjoyable to watch on the Dash side of things that is no doubt something that I need to bring up was Rachel Daly's play on the back line. It's phenomenal to watch her play. In my biased opinion, just her movement on the field and how she doesn't pass out. I mean, I guess we did see it happen one time last time, but how she doesn't pass out every game.
Yeah.
The motor is nonstop, and the playmaking abilities and the aggressiveness is very impressive to watch. And she's a player that if you just accidentally turned on a game on Lifetime, then you're gonna latch on to paying attention to just because she's that fun to watch. So that was something that I paid attention to last game, something I'll pay attention to the rest of the year. She's obviously the number one or two leader on that team, especially with the injuries that they have right now. When Ohio comes back, we'll see how that changes their formation up some. But she's fit in well on that back line for Houston.
Do you have an addition to your weekly daily report?
Addition?
Anything else to add to it?
No, I would say that's it.
All right.
There is a new hat on royallyfly.com that I'll probably wind up buying. It's $32.
It's worth it.
But it's a pretty cool looking hat. Is there something I should add?
I don't know. I guess if you don't know, or maybe you just forgot, she got called up to the national team for some World Cup qualifying games.
Yeah, so we're obviously seeing a change in philosophy, a coaching staff change, and we were obviously speculating why she didn't make the team last time, but we're past that now. Yeah, she's been called up, and we'll play in those matches, and not a whole lot of doubt in my mind that there's going to be a looking back. I think that's her spot to have now to keep on the England team.
I agree.
Yeah, so good for Ray. Did you get to watch any of the Utah game? Your thoughts on? I know we sent a couple texts back and forth, but I was pretty impressed. I was that word that I'd given them about basically there were players that needed to step up. They're in the spotlight now. It's their time to shine, and they came out very quick. That team did, and they looked like they had been playing together for forever. And it all been in the spotlight, and they did end with a tie. But if they can keep what they had going there early on throughout the year, it's a team to reckon with, I believe.
Yeah, I would agree with you. They definitely surprised me in that first game. I think they scored within the first 2 minutes of the game, maybe even minute and a half, something like that. And my first thought was just, oh no, this could be a really long game for Orlando. They were not looking like they were going to stop or slow down or hold back or anything. So I was really impressed with them. So I'm excited to see them. I know that O'Hara is out for tomorrow. I do believe they play Houston tomorrow. I do believe there's one other player that's out.
They're probably just giving her some rest because they're playing Houston.
I forgot what it was. I think it was a hamstring or something. We'll see.
Mhm. Just something I was looking on the report from the game. It
Hmm.
just looking at this format. It's titled. It's from a tweet from a Mike Gramajo.
Hmm.
2018 referee pool reporter question form, and it has three
Yeah,
different questions.
yeah.
Why was it a handball on Becky Sauerbrunn? And there's an answer.
Hmm.
Did you consider speaking with the closest AR on the
Hmm.
handball with an answer? Why was a yellow card issued to Becky Sauerbrunn? And then an answer on there. And so this looks like it's the referee. Is it the referee answering? Is that right?
I would have to look at that again. Let me see. I think I saved it because I think
And these questions all are about the handball called on Becky, obviously, and that was what led to Marta's penalty kick,
Mm-hmm.
which she did convert on. So that was the tying goal for the Pride, which wound up being the deciding point factor of the match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was I. I looked down for 2 seconds.
Mhm.
By the time I went back to my computer, the play had stopped and I didn't even know what happened. And then I actually turned on the broadcast to listen. And all I saw was Becky pretty much holding her face and all of a sudden they're lining up for a penalty and I was just like, what just happened? And even if I was watching, I'm not even sure I would understand what just happened because that was terrible, which is just a continuation from last year. So I'm not exactly surprised by it. Disappointed, but not surprised. I
Yeah, and as
didn't.
you mentioned,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna make comments about Go 90.
Hmm.
I didn't experience anything to the extent of what I experienced last year. I did see a lot of complaints on Twitter though on how it was behind. Some people did have their screens go black. But I mean, streaming anything offline is always going to be behind.
Right.
So that's normal and that's typically how I watch games anyways is offline. So I'm used to the 1 to 2 minutes behind regular time.
Yeah, no complaints from me.
Right.
But yeah, that's fine. And I was going to get into next week, which you already mentioned as far as Utah going to Houston. So that
Mm-hmm.
is tomorrow's match. That's at 7 p.m. Central Time. And then on Saturday, there are three matches. Sky Blue are playing their first game. They'll be in Cary to take on the Courage. The Spirit hosts the Orlando Pride.
Mm-hmm.
And the Red Stars will be at home at Bridgeview Toyota Park playing against the Portland Thorns. Orlando Washington game. That's the 2:30 Lifetime Network game of the week.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I said, Sky Blue will open up their season. My complete team, as we
Yeah.
decided last week,
Yeah.
they'll open up the season. We'll see how actually complete they are, or if I'm completely wrong on that, as they do face what
Good
looked to be
teams.
the team to beat,
Right.
North Carolina Courage.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see that game.
Yeah, good measuring stick for both squads are as competent as I think they should be with that
Right.
roster.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments on those games? What you're looking forward to this weekend in particular?
Nothing in particular. I'm hoping that Houston can pull off a win. I think that they would be fully capable of doing so this weekend or tomorrow night, I should say. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I have. And I think my game of the week would be the North Carolina Courage and Sky Blue game.
And after this weekend, there will be a week break from the NWSL, and we'll pick back up on Saturday, April 14th. We'll have to wait a week to get back into things, but we had 2 weekends, so it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, Final Four that also begins tomorrow. So there's a lot of exciting weekends in sports. This is another one of those where we do have the Final Four. NWSL, we're still getting underway here to start the season, and always something going on. So we'll try to find something else to talk about next time. If that is a week from Thursday or 2 weeks from Thursday, we'll see what's going on in our schedules. But is there anything else you want to talk about tonight?
That is all that I had.
Okay. Well, I'll close out my tabs then. And like I said, we'll figure out next Thursday, 2 weeks from Thursday. We'll see what's going on, how much stuff there is to talk about, maybe some breaking news that'll have to be on next Thursday. So we'll figure that out when we get there. But as for this evening, we thank you for stopping by the Harrah Press Box.